My next guest is Dr. Michelle Singh. She is a national board certified teacher, CEO of LCT-E Learning Solutions, and founder of Restful Teacher and Empty2Empowered. A globally recognized education leader, Michelle champions equity, innovation, and well-being in education. Her equal methodology equips educators and leaders with research-based strategies and emerging technologies to create inclusive and engaging learning environments. As a Jamaican immigrant, Michelle's passion for cultural empathy and inclusivity has fueled over 2 decades of transformative impact as a teacher, district leader, professor, consultant, and speaker. Through her curricula, training programs, and keynotes, she provides actionable solutions to today's biggest educational and organizational challenges, from burnout to disengagement, helping schools, institutions, and organizations cultivate thriving leaders and empowered learners. Well, welcome to the podcast, Michelle. You are muted.
Of course I am. I was just saying that I am. Well, thank you, first of all. Happy to be here, and I'm very excited to start this conversation. Wellness. I am definitely an advocate for wellness, especially when it comes to our educators who are in the trenches.
And that's where we'll start off with. Tell me about a time when you were in the trenches and managed to crawl out.
Oh goodness. So yeah, there's so many times from being a new teacher, struggling, getting there early before before the sun came up and leaving in the dark, having my custodian friends walk me out to my car to make sure I was safe. But I think the biggest piece of my teaching experience that had the greatest impact on me and where I am today is me leaving teaching. So I am someone who has been in education over 20 years. So even though in those 20 years I have not been in the same role, I have been in various roles, from a classroom teacher. So I consider myself a forever ELA teacher because I taught secondary language arts. And I worked at the district level as a professional learning, professional development specialist, a curriculum specialist. I led training in educational technology. And I've been a consultant, a learning consultant in the corporate world, a client success manager in the corporate world, all up until now as the founder and CEO of an educational consulting company. But still, the biggest story deep in the trenches is in 2019, when I made the very, very difficult and life-changing decision to leave teaching. So I did leave the public school system in 2019, but I actually did not leave education. So I had transitioned from the classroom, in my mind, to make a greater impact, because I was connecting and teaching and leading in more schools than just the students in my own classroom. And in my mind, the impact was so much greater. I could reach more and teach more. But when I got to a certain level, there was just so much restriction and objections and red tape. And as a woman of color in the role that I was, I did not feel that my voice and my ideas and even my being as a human was valued. And so there were a lot of things leading up to why I left teaching in 2019. But teaching for me became just a different kind of hard. It was spiritually hard, mentally hard, emotionally hard, physically hard. I had gained the most weight during that time than I ever weighed my entire life. My health was at risk. And I prayed about it. I, I am I'm a God's girl. So I am, I have my prayer time, my devotional time, and everything was just leading me to leaving. But the good thing about what happened was, even though I left the public school system, I did not leave education. Because as you can see, I'm still very much in the education ecosystem as a professor of 10 years, as an educational consultant, still consulting and leading and coaching teachers that are in the very district that I worked in. And so I am still very much in the trenches. It's just that I'm a different kind of teacher, but I would say that teaching just became a different kind of hard for me. And I could not continue living like that, because if I did, I honestly would have shortened my lifespan. And I have a child. I have a daughter to think about. I have a family to think about. And I also thought about all of the health factors that have affected people in my family. I was actually seeing my own grandfather go through some of those those health risks. He had diabetes. He passed away not long after that. But just kind of seeing those things happen in real time, I had to do something. I had to do something to protect my life and to protect myself and to protect, my well-being, my mental stability. And God opened a door, and I walked right through it. So that's the short of the long. But I talk a little bit about that story of me leaving teaching in the ASCD Educational Leadership magazine. And so we can definitely share that link for you to read that article there, where it just gets a little bit more in my story, because it really wasn't just one thing. It was a culmination of things leading up to July 2019, when I walked away from the institution of education in the public school system.
Yeah, I definitely think there are a lot of things like you mentioned, physical health, mental health, really not feeling valued, right, for your worth as an educator and your opinions. I think that's something that's even more amplified 6 years later with a lot of educators. However, you're still within the space. Like you said, you're still consulting, coaching many of the same schools where you worked. I'll put the link in there. Is there anything that is in the article that you wanted to refer to that you might have not already mentioned in the trench story?
The article is not just about my story of
Mhm.
leaving the article, and it's not a call for teachers to leave. So let me just be clear about that, because I believe that if conditions were better, I would have stayed. I just created better conditions for myself and went back in the way that is more aligned with a healthier lifestyle. So I went back into education, but just in a different way. And so this article is not just about my story. It's actually providing concrete steps and strategies of what educational leaders can do to retain people like me before we actually make the decision to leave.
Yeah, I think that's something that really has not been focused on enough with leaders since the pandemic. I see there's a lot of people being hired. They scramble to hire people sometimes last minute before the school year starts. And then recently at schools I've been in, there's been people who leave within, a couple months, right? And then even when you're talking about retention from a school year to a school year, what's something that you'd like to point out as just a simple retention strategy for leaders to retain educators of color?
I always start with this, not just for the leaders, but also for the teachers and just for every human. I think
Mhm.
it's so important that we start with reflection
Mhm.
instead of reaction, because we automatically react to behaviors and to actions that are happening around us without actually reflecting on things that have contributed to those actions and behaviors, like systemic barriers, unconscious biases, institutional practices that are just not up to date. And so we have to do some inward and outward reflection before before we react. We actually have to examine the gaps that are in our educational system, because let's just be honest, our system was not built with our wellness in mind. It was not. It was built for us to perform and produce and perform and produce. And so with that, we have to take a step back and reflect and see how we can identify those gaps in a system that does not honor the actual human person. It honors more their performance.
Yeah, I really agree with what you're saying. Because that's about the person. It's about the people who are involved with those kids, teaching the kids rather than how you're doing on the math scores. So I'm going to link that in the show notes so people can access that article. I did want to also talk about your latest book, which is Breathe Between the Lines. Tell me a little bit about
Oh
how
yeah,
you came
I'm
up.
so happy about this book. It brings me joy
Mhm.
whenever I think about it, because of just why I wrote it and why it even exists. So I mentioned before, I'm a professor, so I'm a professor in the teacher education program at two different institutions, and so I spend a lot of time observing and learning and connecting with these wonderful human beings who are going to be the educators that serve the students in classrooms in our public schools and in our private schools and in our charter schools, right? And so this book is a tie-in to the program that I have called the Restful Teacher. I'll talk a little bit about that later, because that's like a whole nother story of how that even started. But the book Read Between the Lines came from a lot of the challenges and a lot of the questions and a lot of the coaching and advice that I would offer to, and still continue to offer to these teachers who are new teachers or teachers who are teacher candidates. And Breathe Between the Lines is a way for them to honor themselves first, because yeah, in this system and even in our society, in our culture, we kind of have the idea of servant leadership kind of wrong, being humble kind of wrong. In order to serve, you have to be full. You can't pour from an empty cup. I'm sure you guys have heard that before. And so if we are not taking care of ourselves, how are we going to serve and lead others? And so I say it's okay to be selfish and take care of yourself first. And so this book here, it gives educators, no matter if you're a new educator or you've been in it and you need a refresh and a recharge, but it identifies the 7 areas of rest, which is aligned with Dr. Sandra Dalton's research on rest, because resting for us and taking care of ourselves is not just about going to sleep. There's so many parts of our mental, physical, emotional being that needs to be that needs to be addressed and needs to be refreshed. And so this book, it names what those areas are. It identifies the challenges that exist in those areas as a teacher, right? So that we are able to have awareness of what this might look like for us in the classroom. It identifies reframes, mindset shifts that we can take on so that we can begin growing from what we've been told is okay. And it actually connects to culturally responsive teaching, because I believe that when we know better, we do better, but we can also model better for those that we are leading. And so it involves uh, reflection questions that are tied to how we can be more responsive, how we could be more relevant, how we can, be more uh, relational with our students. And these reflection questions, they relate to the areas of rest, and it connects to the ways that we can model these practices and these routines and these behaviors for our students to create environments that also honor their own humanity.
I think that's really something educators need these days, and that ties a lot of those things together, like you said, honoring themselves and be selfish, really take care of yourself because so many teachers are taking care of their students rather than taking care of themselves or
Yeah.
their own family, right? And how
Mm-hmm.
we really need to tie everything together in that responsible and culturally responsive teaching. This is a great book, I think, for teacher teams to use, maybe
Mm.
within their PLC. Have you had any feedback since it was published with any teams that may have used it?
Haven't had any teams use it yet, but I've
Uh-huh.
had individual teachers talk about how it's helped them to incorporate strategies, because I do have sections in there on strategies for the classroom as well as strategies for you. So they've been able to implement these in their day to day. Like, it's not, I got to go to the gym for 30 minutes or
Mm-hmm.
I got to go to a yoga class for an hour. I mean,
Sure.
these are implementable, like doable things that you can do like right now. And then the reflection piece is so important. One of the most important lessons I learned, and sadly, it took me to get to my profession
Mm-hmm.
to learn it. But reflection, when I was doing my national board certification the first time, reflection is just, it is such a, it is a tool we all need. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that we know how to do.
Sure.
It's not something we're taught to do, but it should be something that we're taught to do, because reflection is not just, okay, I'm gonna sit down and write in my journal.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many ways to reflect. And so I give space for reflection within this journal. I talk about ways reflection can happen. And I
Mm-hmm.
also talk about how they can incorporate breathing,
Mm-hmm.
the power of breathing. That's why it's called breathe between the lines. There are lots of lines,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
how do you breathe between the lines? So there's the clarity breath and what they can do for like 3 to 5 minutes for that clarity breath to help their thoughts feel lighter and lighter. And it,
Mm-hmm.
it it has different ways that they can breathe for each area of of rest that this book focuses on. So this one is special to me because it came from a need, and it came from my own experience of implementing these practices, as well as what teachers have shared with me that they what one that they needed, but also what they have tried that have worked too for them.
Yeah, so you get a little bit of input from the field as well. So,
Absolutely, yeah, because this is all coming from the Restful Teacher program, which is a
hmm
part of what we do, and
hmm
this program is has been around now 3 years, and
Okay.
I've gotten feedback globally from educators regarding just the different practices and initiatives of the Restful Teacher.
So tell me a little bit about the program and how teachers can join. And is it a type of cohort? How does it work?
So yeah, so it first started. I'm gonna just be honest. This just started from me
hmm
actually making a decision to go to a retreat all by myself. And this
hmm
was after I left teaching in 2019, and I started really doing a lot of inward
Yeah.
healing work. And like I said, because there was so much going on with me mentally and physically and spiritually and emotionally, I needed to do something different. And
hmm
so there was a retreat that I went on by myself, and this just also happened. All of this was happening around the time that there were a lot of life changes for me. Things from my daughter, my only child,
hmm
leaving to go to college. So here I am, empty nester, right? And so that was a whole shift of life as well.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather had recently passed away. That was a whole shift of life,
Mm-hmm.
because that was just a major loss. My grandfather is practically my father because my father was not in the picture.
Mm-hmm.
And um, so that, there was just so much happening. And so I decided I was going to pay my money out of my pocket. No school or organization was paying for this. And this is
Mm-hmm.
also something that I find, with educators. Um, there are opportunities for us to grow and develop, and it can benefit our students and the people that we work with, but we don't have the resources, and the schools won't help us get to these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had to come out of pocket for conferences and things like that that benefit everybody that I've worked with, but I had to come out of pocket for it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you
I know what
know?
you're talking about. That's something I do a lot. Yeah.
But that's a whole nother thing, but
Mhm.
I do touch on that in the article. But anyway, so I went to this retreat, and that's where I was introduced to this idea that rest can be seven different things, like it's
Okay.
not just sleeping. And so I started to dive deeper into that, and I started to learn more about it. And I'm like, okay, how can I relate this to me as a teacher, as someone who literally does not have the time in the day because, I'm teaching, or my college students, or I'm doing consulting or coaching, and how can I
Mhm.
make this doable for me? And
Mhm.
so I decided that I wanted to share what I was doing every day, with the world. And
Yeah.
so I created the Restful Teacher Challenge, and I started to interview and talk to different folks in the well-being space, from mental health folks to coaches, and
Mhm.
they were giving advice on just these different areas of rest and wellness for educators. And so that launched 3 years ago, and we have had a challenge every year. And we have interviewed and talked to different folks from different fields, from medical professionals to HR professionals, that help educators with insights that they can use to implement in their daily practice. And so from the Restful Teacher Challenge, that was like the first thing that we did, came the workshops and the webinars. And we've done, in partnership with lots of organizations, the workshops and the webinars for the Restful Teacher. So we've done one with ASCD, ISTE, I mean, we've done it with quite a few people and a few organizations. And then from the workshops, we've had digital resources, we have online courses, we have self-assessments, we have affirmation cards, little cards that allow for, let me grab them from behind me really quick. These affirmation cards give teachers actual actions they can take in their day to day related to each of the areas of rest that they can implement. They keep it right on their desk, gives them a reminder as well as an affirmation. This is what I can do today to practice my mental rest. All right, so we have these kind of resources. We have the book Read Between the Lines, and we have in-person workshops as well. Actually, we just launched the Restful Girl Experience for young girls to teach them about how they can implement these well-being practices with themselves and their families. And so that's what that's what the program is. There's lots of components to it. We have a Facebook group. We, like I said, we have the books, we have the digital resources. We're going to be launching into other live events in 2026. I am local in Miami, Florida. So if you ever want to come and visit Miami and come to one of our events, Miami is a great place to be. And so yeah, that's what it is. It's very exciting because I my vision and my goal for the Restful Teacher program is to help educators and leaders be okay with putting themselves first, and actually rewriting some of those narratives that we've held on to for so long, from whether it's cultural expectations, familial expectations, or societal expectations, that we have to give so much to everybody to be valued or to be worthy. and we have to constantly produce and perform to be validated. So I want to confront and rewrite some of those narratives and shift them to putting ourselves first, because if we are not well, folks around us ain't going to be well either. We cannot teach well if we don't feel well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important to have a community like that, and really have those things that teachers can join, like the Facebook group, live events. I'll put all the links in the show notes if people are interested in joining as well. So when you've been consulting, what are some of the things that you do, for example, in terms of workshops, in terms of speaking at conferences? Maybe if you want to highlight a few of the upcoming ones that you might be doing, so we can get an idea of some of the services you offer.
Oh yeah. So I just completed last week a conference. It was held in New York, and I talked about the disrupting disengagement. So outside of the well-being, I also my dissertation is focused on student disengagement, and so this particular conference session, and I'm also going to be doing a keynote for this conference next year as well. But it is about strategies that teachers have told me that they need, and that has worked to see disengagement differently, see student disengagement not as defiance, but to see it as data, and then use that human data to make decisions about what to do next to re-engage students. So there's that piece. I have a framework called the Equal methodology, which you mentioned when you read when you shared my bio. And so the Equal methodology is actually fortified by the findings in my dissertation. So the Equal methodology is basically 5 human-centered teaching practices that will address belonging. It addresses collaboration. It addresses how to use evidence from your teaching for student growth and progress so that it is visible. And so there's workshops on each of those topics in the Equal methodology. There's also workshops and institutes that I work consecutively with in a cohort that addresses all 5 areas of the Equal methodology. So equity, belonging, well-being, and innovation are 3 key, are key things that I frequently talk about, and I frequently teach about and speak about. And so you'll see that like represented whenever you hear me, whenever you're connecting with me, or whenever you're engaging with me. I've also been doing lots of conversations and presentations on AI, but not just AI tools, because I'm not talking about how to use the tools and which tools are the best to use. What I address is using AI in an ethical way, using AI in an equitable way, and using AI in an empathetic way. And so for me, AI use, I absolutely, believe in it. I believed in it years ago when it was first getting traction. But it's just so much more than just using a tool. It's so much more than that, and that's what that's I always address the human aspect of it, the human first, AI next. And I think that's the case in a lot of the tools that we use in technology in education. How do we make it actually more human? We are the experts, so we can't just have it do all the work for us.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
No, I
Sorry.
think that's definitely needed in terms of like people learning about using AI because it's not just how to use it effectively. It's really, using it as a resource, but putting the human first, using it
Mm-hmm.
equitably and ethically. I think that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of not being implemented correctly in some cases. So yeah, I really
Yeah.
that's great. I wanted to know if you were going to speak at any upcoming conferences. I have NCTE and Learning Forward coming up in the next
Oh,
month.
yeah.
You said
Okay,
you've spoken
so
at those before.
yes, definitely NCT and Learning 4. But so I won't be physically there at
Mhm.
NCTE this year, but I'm collaborating with a
Mhm.
fellow educator, and I am the equal methodology is actually the equity framework that's going to
Okay.
be featured in that particular workshop. It's called Dreaming. Let me find the title. So if you are at NCTE in a few weeks, you will see it. Dreaming in the Margins, Building Inclusive English Classrooms Through Identity and Equity Frameworks. And so the equal, I'll be there virtually. I won't be there like in person, but I'll be there virtually.
Okay.
And I'll be sharing how the equal methodology can be used to build belonging in our learning, in our English classrooms, but ultimately in our learning environment. So
Hmm.
the 5 stages or the 5 dimensions of the equal methodology, evaluating your context, which is again reflecting and examining those systems, those beliefs and those routines that shape the learning spaces that we create for our students to
Hmm.
feel like they belong, right?
Hmm.
We also have to, the cue is qualify the learning, which is designing instruction that's rigorous, that's
Hmm.
relevant, and that's reachable. So our students can attain mastery, and so that it also ties in their lived experience. Then
Hmm.
there's the U, where it's all about emotional safety, because that
Hmm.
was a major theme that emerged also from the research that I've done. We have to uplift that belonging so that students have that psychological safety and their identities are affirmed in the learning spaces. And there's the A, which is about activating collaboration, because we are not in this work by ourselves. A lot of times we close that school classroom door and we think that it's just on us. And that is also something that we have to shift. We have to lean on and be able to ask for help and to, activate and call on those partnerships. My TED talk actually tapped in on that. It takes a community to raise a classroom, was what my TED talk was about. And then the last part of the equal methodology is the L, which is to leverage evidence. So, how can we use assessment and feedback and reflection to motivate and direct the growth of our students and ourselves? How do we make that visible and measurable in our spaces? And so that's the framework, the equity framework that's being used in that session. And other sessions that I have done focuses on the equal methodology too. Sessions from, I've done it for Microsoft, done it for NAGC, many other folks. ISTE ASCD, where the equal methodology has been that framework um, to tackle challenges and offer solutions that we see every single day in our teaching and learning environments.
Well, thanks so much for sharing a little bit about that framework. I will put a link to that for those who are registered, if they can access the virtual talk prior to, or sorry, after the conference as well. We've had a great conversation today around your work, your article, your newest book. And you've done so many things really to help with educators, to help them stay in the profession despite the trenches that they're in. Out of everything we talked about today, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
I would say, um, I would say that I would leave with this. Um, in order for us to do anything well on the outside, we have to
Mhm.
be well on the inside.
Yeah.
That means that, we have to be very aligned with who we are, with our identity. We have to find joy, whatever that means for us. We have to to be confident enough to share our voice
Hmm.
and share our story. And we also have to acknowledge that, look, a lot of these systems that we're a part of are broken. They
Hmm.
were not designed for us. And we have to find the way that we can thrive within them, because they're not going to change. They haven't changed in hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So, how can we thrive in those systems and protect and honor our identity, our dignity, and our humanity?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great to leave with. Yeah, because that's how we can, stay in the profession, really align with
Mm-hmm.
our identity, right? And don't be afraid to share your voice and what you're thinking. A lot of educators, I think, are they suppress a lot of feelings.
Oh yes, yeah, we
Yeah.
do. Authenticity is so real. It's
Hmm.
not just for us,
Yeah.
because let me tell you, sharing out loud, it just feels like freedom. But what I will say is that that authenticity is also needed for connection with your students.
Hmm.
If
Hmm.
you are not, if you are not just being who you are as a human being, and
Hmm.
sharing those experiences, the things that are not perfect,
Yeah.
so students can see the real you,
Hmm.
that's how they're going to connect. We don't connect with perfection. I mean,
Hmm.
think of the things that the people that we listen to, and the podcasts and the videos that we watch and listen to those things that are about the challenges and overcoming those things.
Hmm. Hmm.
Well, the students are human just like us, so they
Hmm.
don't want to see perfection. And so we got to flip that mindset too.
Hmm.
And just and show up the way we are, and model growth, and model what it means to grow from failure for our students.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, where can people connect with you and find you online?
Sure. So it's easy. It's connectwithmichelle.com. So Michelle with two L's. If you just go to connectwithmichelle.com, it'll ask you to enter your name and email address, and then you'll get an email with all of the resources and ways that and programs and different things that you can have access to. And we'll be able to communicate via email. And you can
Hmm.
also schedule some time to chat with me if you'd like as well. So, but that's the easiest way. Just go to connectwithmichelle.com and enter your name, and then we'll be connected. And if you're interested with finding out more about the Restful Teacher, just go to restfulteacher.com.
Okay.
restfulteacher.com.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for being my guest on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. It was great hearing about how you help educators, hearing about some of your resources, and hopefully this will help educators who need to just feel validated about what they're doing and get some more ideas about putting themselves first.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.